in Revelation chapter 3. We're going to be picking up at verse 7 to about verse 13. We're going to look at Philadelphia. And we've been in these 7 churches, and only 2 of the churches did not get condemnation. Philadelphia is one of those. But this is, again, one of those churches that went through great suffering. And there was great endurance that went along with this suffering. Look at verse 7. It says this: "Write this letter to the angel of the church in Philadelphia." It's to the pastor, to the one who's going to present this to the people of Philadelphia. "This is the message from the one who is holy and true, the one who has the key of David. What he opens, no one can close, and what he closes, no one can open." And I want to stop with that verse and just kind of dig into that one for a little bit before we get into the greater part of the message, because I think this is incredibly important. There's 3 words that come out. It describes Jesus, and the way he describes him is, one, he's holy, he's true, and he's the one who holds the key of David. And I've got this in your notes. So this is how Jesus described. First, let's look at the word holy. Luke chapter 1, verse 49 says, "For the mighty one has done great things for me, and holy is his name." We've got to remember, every time we come into his presence, that he is holy. He can't wink at our sin. He can't join us in our sin. He is holy, and he will always be holy. As a matter of fact, he came here so that you and I can be holy too. And he provides that holiness by giving us himself, the Holy Spirit, and then he gives us the fruit of the Spirit so that we can walk holy lives. One of the reasons why Philadelphia didn't get any kind of condemnation is they recognized who he was in his holiness, and they joined him in his holiness. Any church that wants to walk without any kind of condemnation, any church that wants to walk with any kind of judgment, remember, each one of these churches, he judged them. At the very beginning, I talked about he was kind of like the undercover boss. He was walking among these 7 churches, and he said, "These things are good, but this is what I hold against you." And for 5 of the churches, he's going to say, "This is what I hold against you." But in Philadelphia, they didn't get that condemnation because they recognized his holiness, and they walked in his holiness. Now, listen, this is church-wide. I mean, all churches in America, we got to do a better job as a church walking holy. And then it's individual. You see, the church is in the building. The church is you and I. You and I are the church. And when we walk in his holiness, then God can bless. And there is no condemnation. Now, there is no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. But again, that passage is based living in Christ Jesus. So you and I have choices. We can walk out of his fellowship. I'm not saying we can walk out of his grace. I'm not saying you'll lose your salvation. What I'm simply saying is you can walk out of fellowship. There are carnal Christians. There are Christians who can come to church every week. There are churches that they can sing worship songs, and their heart is not right. And more than that, it could be you. It could be me. If it feels like there's a finger being pointed, there's always 3 pointing back at me. We always have to take good inventory of where we are in our relationship with God. Where's our heart? They didn't receive any condemnation because they recognized his holiness. In 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 15 and 16, it's in your notes, it says, "But as he called you is holy, you also be holy in your what? Conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy." He is calling us out in 1 Peter. He's calling us out as individuals in the church to walk holy. And that's why they didn't receive any condemnation. And then the second word that comes out is he's true. This word in the Greek isn't just like a true statement. This is somebody who is true, genuine, authentic, real, transparent. You know, somebody said to me many times, says, "Why are you so transparent with us? Why do you show your warts?" A lot of pastors don't show you your warts. Now, I do because I'm just like you. We're all human. We all make mistakes. There would be times in church I'd see these pastors, and they walked so far above me. I could never live up to that. But then I went to one this church for a while, and this pastor, not that he shared every one of his sins, but he just seemed real to me. I could relate to that. And it helped me in my faith. Watching my pastor go through different struggles and come out on the other side helped me realize that I could do that as well. And what I'm saying to you is this. I don't want you to go maybe air your dirty laundry to everybody else. But what I do want you, I want you to walk in a way that people see that you're authentic, that you're real, that you're transparent, that you have hurts and you have pains and you have struggles and you have trials and you have testings. But Jesus is going to be that testament. We're going to see a couple testimonies, or at least one testimony here in a little bit. And I tell you what, these testimonies, I've said this many, many times. Joni Eareckson Tada is one of my favorite people in the world. Her testimony is amazing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's had cancer 3 times? 3 times. She's had cancer 3 times. She's been in a chair for 60 years. I think it's 50 or 60 years she's been in a chair. All the pain that she goes through every morning. And she shares that with people. Now, she doesn't walk around with her head down. She walks around with her head up. She shares the gospel. She's going through those things. But you understand what I'm saying? She's not just sharing dirty laundry. She's not just, woe is me. She sits in that kind of pain and that kind of struggle, and she says, listen, I could not make this if it weren't for Jesus Christ. And that testimony goes out in such a way that it inspires many. I got a chance, I think I've shared this before. I was in a music group back years ago before I had vocal cord surgery and stuff called His Instrument. And we sang at different places, and we were a quartet of about 7 people. And we would sing different places. We got to do a lot of stuff with Bill Gaither's people. We would do warm-up for the Gaither vocal band. And there was one particular time we were singing at an event, and Joni Eareckson Tada was the main attraction that night. And she'd been riding around in her chair, and her battery was going low. So she asked me to kind of push her around. So I got to push around Joni Eareckson Tada, and up the ramp, and we're having this conversation. And I asked her, it was at a time in my life, I just asked her, I says, do you ever want to give up? She said, yeah. I was shocked by that answer. She said, yeah. But I so am thankful that I am in a place where I'm dependent on Jesus. And Jesus has been the one who has sustained me through my life. He has given me a ministry I never dreamed I would have. I get to share the gospel all the time. But I also know that I live in a fishbowl, so I need good people around me. She's just going on and she's sharing her testimony to me. I walked away from that experience having been lifted up. Because I saw her in her pain, but I also saw her in her grace. And one of the reasons why this church wasn't condemned is because they walked holy and they were transparent about who they were. As a matter of fact, we'll get to this in a minute, but they call some of Little Strength. This church is called Little Strength. And for a couple of reasons. One, they were a small church. There were probably only a couple dozen people in this church. But they had one of the greatest impacts. So I want you to know that small churches can have great impacts if we walk holy and we're transparent. We walk with a testimony. And the third thing is, one of the words that describes him, it says, the one who holds the key of David. Now, this one's kind of interesting. Listen to what it says in Isaiah chapter 22, verses 20 through 22. And then I will call my servant Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, to replace you. We'll dress him in your royal robes, and will give him your title and your authority. And I will be the father to the people of Jerusalem and Judah. I will give him the key to the house of David. This is talking about Jesus. We're going to give the key to the house of David. Now we know that David is a part of that lineage. We know that he's that messianic promise. I'll get that out. But yeah, that's all, folks. Anyway, I know we'll get that he's a part of that messianic promise. But he says, I will give him the key to the house of David, the highest position in the royal court. When he opens doors, no one will be able to close them. And when he closes doors, no one will be able to open them. This is an incredible promise. It's more than just he's in a lineage of the house of David. It's more than he's a part of the roots of the house of David. He is the fulfillment of the messianic promise. In other words, not only was he born in that line, but he was given the key. And that key, because he died on the cross, rose again, because he fulfilled that messianic promise, he has the ability to close and open doors. Now, how many of you guys need doors open in your life? And the promise is that he can open that door. And nobody can close it. If he opens it, nobody can close it. If he closes the door, nobody can open it. One of the meanings of this is that your life, because of his messianic promise, because of his salvation, that if he opens the door to heaven to you, no one can close it. That you can spend eternity, that's a promise, that's a covenant, that's a promise that he makes. No one can take that away from you. It doesn't matter what people say about you. It doesn't matter how people treat you. It doesn't matter what happens in your life. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how much education. No one can take that away from you, because when he promises it to you, it's a promise kept.
Come on.
And it also means that any other promises that he opens the door to you. Nobody can take it away. I felt like a long time ago, God gave me a promise that this church was going to make a huge difference in the community. And I've always stood on that promise that if he opens that door, it doesn't matter what opposition comes, it's going to be fulfilled. Any promise given to me in my life, nobody can take that away from me. And nobody can take it away from you. I stand on promises of healing all the time. And if he opens the door to that for me, nobody can take that away from you. I am claiming that promise for you. I'm claiming that promise for Juanice. I'm standing on those promises for people in our church. Because if God gives it, nobody can take it away. And sometimes God answers in ways that I don't know why he took Ed, but I know this. Ed never had to suffer in a convalescent home for months, watching him die. He was able to go. And I think that was a great gift. At 98 years of age, almost 98 years of age, I think that was an incredible gift. I think God just opened the door and let him go home. And there were probably 140 people between the viewing and the funeral yesterday of people that came. His life had an impact. All I'm saying is this. If we walk holy, if we walk transparent, if we trust the one who holds the key of David, nothing can be against, nothing can come against us.
Right.
So I want you to understand at this very beginning of this passage, when he's talking to Philadelphia, he's talking to people who are walking in this description of Christ, holy, true, and they are standing on the promises of the one who holds the key. My God's never left me nor forsaken me. Now, I want you to understand a little bit about this place, Philadelphia. It's still there today. It's not called Philadelphia. It's Elisha. And if you remember our map, from all the way back to the top. There we go. If you remember our map, it's one of the 7 churches, and it's right here, and it's up on a high, kind of a mountainous area. You can kind of see it from a distance and so forth, but it's very small, and this is what it looks like today. You see the mountain range around it, so it's kind of got this this appearance of being high. And then, this is what it looked at the time, and this is kind of interesting. See these huge pillars? Philadelphia was built in a volcanic area. So, these volcanoes would come, and they would destroy the city. In AD 16, it was completely devastated, but they rebuilt on top of the devastation. And then in AD 60, it was devastated again. These people were always living in tentative times. They were not living in stable they actually had to sometimes live on rubble. Do you ever sometimes look at your life and feel like you're waiting for the second shoe to fall?
Oh, yes.
This last year with COVID, you kind of wonder, what else is going to happen, They lived in this kind of instability. But they built these pillars. So after they had a number of volcanoes and earthquakes, and they're kind of living in this tentative time, they kind of learned to build these huge pillars to help them, that would sustain them in the next earthquake. Listen, gang. I've lived my Christian life long enough, and I've been in the Word long enough that my pillars have gotten a lot larger. So when those unstable times come, I'm sustained. And who is the pillar of my life? Jesus. I can look back in my past and I see all the times he's helped me through those moments, and that helps my pillar to get stronger. So when the next shoe falls, when the next earthquake or volcano of my life comes, I'm sustained because of my relationship with Jesus. Let's see. Go ahead. Yeah, this is one of the volcanoes. It's not as active today as it was in that day. And this is some of the devastation that was created just recently. This was just a couple of years ago in this area, and it took out. We've had more earthquakes and stuff in these last days than ever before, and this is one of the devastations of that. Listen, here's the point I want to make. Some of you are going through crisis moments right now. Some of you are going through some things, and it feels like the ground is shaking in your life. And there's already been some instability. How many would say you're there? I'm just kind of curious. You're kind of going through some tentative times. Yeah? Okay. I'll admit it. All right. What I want you to know is this. Revelation 1:18 says this: I am the living one. And I died, but I am alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and the grave. 1 Corinthians 16:8-9. In the meantime, I will be staying here at Ephesus until the festival of Pentecost. There is a wide open door for great work here, although many oppose me. What I'm saying is this: even in the shaky moments of your life, even in those moments when things seem tentative, God has given us promises. And these promises, they say, don't fret. I hold the keys to death. Don't fret. When I open a door, no one can close it. Don't fret. I'm with you. One of my favorite verses in all the scriptures: lo, as I'm with you, even into the uttermost parts of the earth. Now, I remember saying this to a guy who was getting on an airplane, and I said, hey, man, let me give you my life verse. Lo, I'm with you. He says, yeah, did you catch that? Lo, I'm with you. That means I'm not supposed to get on the plane. No, you need to trust God. Revelation 3:8 says this: I know all the things you do. So now, again, here he is. He's looking at Philadelphia as kind of the undercover boss, and he's kind of looking at what they're doing. He says, I know your deeds. I know the things you do, and I have opened a door for you that no one can close. You have little strength, yet you obeyed my word and did not deny me. It was in their obedience that God blessed them. Because they were obedient, they lived their holy lives. Because they were authentic. Because they went to the one who holds the keys of David. Because of that, God blessed this little church who had little strength. One of the things that was happening to this day too, and look at this passage in verse 3, chapter 9, it says, look, I will force those who belong into Satan's synagogue, those liars who say they are Jews but are not, to come and bow down at your feet. They will acknowledge that you are the ones I love. So what was happening here, new Christians were coming into Jesus Christ that were non-Jews. But they were going to the synagogues. They had built synagogues even on the rubble. But the Jews didn't want them there, so they kind of pushed them out of the church. And because they were in the time of Caesar worship, Tiberius was the one that they were worshiping. If they didn't worship Tiberius, they didn't worship Caesar, and they weren't a part of the Jewish church, they were left out there for persecution. Because they weren't a part of the Jewish church, and they had some exemptions. The Jews had some exemptions. The Jewish people kicked them out, said, no, you can't be a part of us. So these Christians didn't have a place to be. And because they didn't worship Caesar, they were under persecution. They were being killed for their faith. But they kept enduring. There are times when we feel like we're on unstable ground. There are times when we feel like we're standing on rubble. And there are times when we feel like, man, I'm being butchered. I'm being persecuted. But because they kept enduring, God opened doors. And they couldn't close it. The Jewish people who kicked them out couldn't close the door on them. The people who were persecuting them, they couldn't close the door. And God blessed that little church. And their impact was the greatest impact of all of the 7 churches. They reached more people for the kingdom than any other of the 7 churches. If you take all the churches and you put them on a timeline, and I might do this next week, but you put them on a timeline, it was a time of revival. Some people believe that we were in that time period, and when Billy Graham died, that we left Philadelphia, and now we're in the time of Laodicea. The point I'm trying to make is this. They were living in a time that was prosperous spiritually, although emotionally, physically, they were in a difficult time. So let me say this. Sometimes God just uses your difficult times to win people to Jesus Christ. I want to show you a video of a guy by the name of Scott Hamilton. Scott Hamilton was an ice skater back in the, I think, 80s or so. And he's a strong Christian today. He's had testicular cancer. Wasn't sure he was going to be able to ended up having a baby. And then he got cancer again. Listen to this.
There's a whole other issue. I have a brain tumor. How do I tell my wife? And we have a 14-month-old son. How do I tell my wife that I have a brain tumor? I just got the news an hour before. I met them at the hotel, and she goes, "What's going on?" And I said, "I have a brain tumor." And she took my hands, and without hesitation, she just started to pray. And it was in that moment I knew where I was going to put everything. My trust, my faith, everything. So the most powerful moment of my life. From that moment forward, we just said, whatever it is, whatever it takes, we'll face this. When they're gonna do a biopsy, they tell you, we're gonna drill a hole in your head, and then we're gonna take a needle down through your brain and take a piece of the tumor. They said, we seem to have found a safe corridor to do this. And I go, well, I'm not using most of it. But they tell you all the things that can go wrong in that surgery. And I remember waking up, and I looked at the clock, and it was 10:20. I knew where I was. And then the next thing I saw was my wife come in with a smile on her face. She said, they know what it is. And they found out that that brain tumor was one that I was born with, one that I'd had since birth, which inhibited my growth as a young child. That was the mysterious illness I had that they never diagnosed that got me into skating. Who would I be without a brain tumor? I'm 5'4". If I were 5'8", if I would have grown those years, 5'10", where would I be? Who would I be? I could choose to look at it as debilitating, to choose to focus on the suffering. I choose to look at that brain tumor as the greatest gift I could have gotten, because it made everything else possible.
Continue on, or?
I didn't see past it this time. I didn't think I would survive. One point I was starting to really feel weak. And one nurse in particular, I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I just was uncomfortable. And she was, can I get you anything? And I just said, no. I go, I'm just a little scared. She said, do you pray? I said, yes. And she said, what do you say when you pray? I go, well, I just thank God for all the blessings in my life. Do you ask him for anything? No. I just want him to know I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Well, who is God to you? And I said, well, I guess he's my father. Oh, you're a father, right? Yes. If one of your children were hurting, wouldn't you want him to come to you for comfort, strength? Yes. So I changed the way I pray now. I ask. Uninhibitedly, I ask. I ask to heal. I ask for strength. I ask for courage. I ask for another child. I talk about miracles. After surviving with a pituitary brain tumor, it's impossible, practically impossible. I did 6 injections a week for 2 years. No luck. We're not meant to have another child. We gave that to God. A month later, we found out that Max was on his way.
Yes.
Miracle Max. When I look back and I see all those little moments in my life where I needed a great deal of strength, I understand that through a strong relationship with Jesus, you can endure anything. I've just learned that the only true disability in life is a bad attitude. God is there to guide you through the tough spots. God was there every single time. Every single time. My name is Scott Hamilton, and I am second.
I don't know why God sometimes heals and sometimes he doesn't. I don't know why God sometimes answers prayers and for somebody and then he does it for another. All I know is this, that God knows what's best for each and one of us. And when we really truly trust him, and we trust that whatever open doors he has for us is for us, we can walk into such peace. I mean, this man has had cancer, he's had 2 brain tumors, didn't think he could have a child, had a child. Miracles happened in his life, but boy, and God used him. I mean, that brain tumor kept him at 5'4", and he ends up being one of the gold medal winners. You got get that one. There he is. It's kind of like what would happen if you saw a picture of me when I was younger. I had hair and this is probably one of my all-time favorites. Look at this lady. With all that she's gone through, she still has a smile on her face. She still has a testimony. And she has endured cancer and pain. She would say, and she wrote this recently, that she says, there are times when I can't even get up in the morning. But I know that God's got a purpose for me. Now, some of you are standing on the rubbles of your life, and you're going through some real turmoil. The earthquake, you're waiting for the next shoe to fall. You're waiting for the next earthquake. But I'm telling you this. If you stay true to him, the one who is holy, the one who is holy, the one who is true, the one who holds the key of David, that pillar gets a little stronger and a little stronger. And when you go through those times, it comes out as a testimony. And I hope this is encouragement to us. So listen to the rest of this. In chapter 3, verse 10, it says, because you have obeyed my command to persevere, I will what? Protect you. From the great time of testing that will come upon the whole earth, the world, to test those who belong to this world. Now, there's some prophetic meaning here, but I'm just going to take the literal meaning, or I mean, there's multiple meanings here, but there's some of the prophetic. But if I obey him, he's going to protect me. He'll protect me from things that the world wants to throw at me. And I wrote this in your notes. They learn to suffer well. Revelation chapter 3, verses 11 through 13 says this, I am coming soon. What's the word here? Hold on. to what you have, so that you will take away, so that no one will take away your crown, and all who are victorious will become pillars in the temple of my God, and they will never have to leave it. And I will write on them the name of my God, and they will be citizens in the city of my God, the New Jerusalem that comes down from heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. Anyone who has ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what He is saying to the churches. There's an incredible promise here. He never leaves us nor forsakes us. Keep holding on, hold on. He is the pillar of our life. And as they learn how to make bigger pillars, the more you trust in Him, the pillar gets bigger in your own life. And then He gets you a new name. We all wear names. Or people put name tags on us. You know, if you've been divorced, yeah, that's the divorced one. Or I don't know, you can place in there a number of different names. I was called stupid. And I believed that for a long time. My uncle called me stupid. And then I found out that I was pretty bright. And so God gave me a new name. He writes new names for you guys. He gave Abram, Abraham. He gave Jacob, Israel. He makes all things new in each one of us. And I'm just saying that to say this. For those of us who hold on, these promises of protection, these promises of victory are for us. And then He uses that as a testimony to others so that they come to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. I just believe in this church, and I believe in you. You're my family. Bow your heads and close your eyes.